The snow fell softly over Riverside Park that Christmas Eve, each flake catching the glow of the holiday lights strung through the trees. The air held that particular stillness that comes with the season, when the world seems to pause and remember what matters. Sarah Mitchell sat alone near the decorated archway, her wheelchair positioned beside a bench where families had gathered earlier in the day. At 28, she had grown accustomed to the solitude, especially during the holidays. Her blonde hair fell in loose waves over the shoulders of her cream-colored jacket, and she pulled her knit hat down a bit further against the cold. The park had mostly emptied as dinner time approached, leaving her with just the twinkling lights and the gentle sound of snow touching ground. She watched the families departing, parents holding children's hands, everyone hurrying toward warm homes and holiday meals. Sarah had learned not to dwell on what she didn't have. After the accident 3 years ago, she'd built a quiet life for herself, one of independence and small satisfactions. But on nights like this, the loneliness felt heavier somehow. That's when she heard the footsteps, light and quick, crunching through the fresh snow. "Excuse me," came a small voice. Sarah turned to see a little girl standing a few feet away. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8, bundled in a bright turquoise coat with a red knit cap pulled over her dark curls. Red mittens covered her small hands, and her brown eyes held an unusual seriousness for someone so young. "Hello there," Sarah said, managing a smile. The girl took a step closer, her breath forming little clouds in the cold air. Behind her, standing near the illuminated Christmas tree, was a man in his 30s wearing a brown jacket. He seemed to be watching, giving the child space but staying close enough to ensure her safety. "My name is Emma," the girl said. "Are you out here by yourself?" Sarah nodded slowly. "I am, just enjoying the lights." Emma looked at her for a long moment, and Sarah recognized something in that gaze. It was the look of someone who understood what it meant to be alone, even at such a young age. Children who had known difficulty often carried that particular wisdom in their eyes. "Do you want to have dinner with us?" Emma asked, the words coming out in a rush, as if she'd been gathering courage to speak them. Sarah felt something catch in her throat. "Oh, sweetheart, that's very kind, but I'm sure your family has their own plans." "That's my Uncle David over there," Emma said, gesturing toward the man by the tree. "It's just us this year. My mom passed away last winter, and Uncle David says Christmas is about sharing, especially with people who might be alone." The simple honesty of it struck Sarah deeply. Here was this child who had lost so much, reaching out to a stranger. She looked over at the man, who had walked closer now. He had kind eyes, the sort that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which he did now, a little uncertain but warm. "I'm David Harper," he said. "Emma's right. We'd be honored if you'd join us. Nothing fancy, just a home-cooked meal and some company. The house is just 2 blocks from here. We can walk together, if you'd like." Sarah hesitated. She'd learned to be cautious, to protect herself from pity. But this didn't feel like pity. It felt like something else entirely. Genuine human kindness. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I don't want to impose on your evening." "You wouldn't be imposing," David said quietly. "Truth is, this is our first Christmas without Emma's mom, my sister. The house feels pretty empty. We'd welcome the company." Emma stepped even closer now. "Please come. I made cookies this morning." "Well, Uncle David helped, but I did most of the decorating." Sarah found herself laughing, a real laugh that surprised her. "How can I say no to cookies?" The walk to their house was slow and careful, David staying beside Sarah's wheelchair on the snowy sidewalk while Emma walked ahead, occasionally turning back to make sure they were still following. She chattered about school, about her teacher Mrs. Chen, about the gingerbread house that had collapsed 3 times before they finally got it to stand. The house was a modest 2-story with a wreath on the door and lights along the porch railing. Inside, the warmth enveloped them immediately, along with the scent of roasting chicken and herbs. The living room held a small Christmas tree decorated with ornaments that clearly spanned generations, some shiny and new, others worn and precious. "My sister collected ornaments," David explained, helping Sarah with her coat. "Each one has a story." Emma immediately took Sarah on a tour of the tree, pointing out the wooden angel her mother had made in high school, the glass ball from her grandparents' 50th anniversary, the clay handprint from Emma's first Christmas. Over dinner, the conversation flowed more easily than Sarah would have imagined. David was a high school English teacher, recently granted custody of Emma after his sister's death from cancer. He spoke carefully about the adjustment, about learning to braid hair and pack school lunches, about the fear of not being enough. "But you are enough," Sarah found herself saying. "Anyone can see how much you love her." Emma nodded seriously. "Uncle David reads to me every night, even when he's really tired, and he learned how to make Mom's special pancakes, even though he burnt them the first 6 times." They all laughed at that, and Sarah felt something loosening in her chest, some tightness she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it was there. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Sarah her room, the walls covered with drawings and a shelf full of books. Sarah noticed immediately that many of the drawings featured a wheelchair. "I saw you in the park last week too," Emma admitted quietly. "You were reading a book on the bench. I wanted to say hello then, but I was shy. Then today, I saw you again, and I thought maybe it was meant to be. Like maybe you needed a friend, and I needed a friend. And Christmas was the right time to be brave." Sarah felt tears prickling her eyes. "You're a very special little girl, Emma." Mom used to say that being kind takes courage sometimes. She said the people who need kindness most are often the hardest to reach, because they've built walls to protect themselves. But she said walls can have doors, if you knock gently enough. The wisdom of it, delivered in such a small voice, made Sarah's heart ache. She reached out and took Emma's small hand in hers. "Your mom sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was," Emma said simply. "Do you have family for Christmas?" Sarah shook her head. "Not anymore. My parents passed several years ago, before my accident. No siblings. I have friends, but they all have their own families." "Then you can share ours," Emma declared with the absolute certainty of childhood. "Right, Uncle David." David had appeared in the doorway, and his eyes met Sarah's with an understanding that needed no words. "Right," he said softly. They spent the evening playing board games at the kitchen table, Emma delighting in beating the adults at checkers. Later, David made hot chocolate while Emma insisted on showing Sarah how to decorate the cookies she'd mentioned. The kitchen became dusted with powdered sugar and sprinkles, and Sarah couldn't remember the last time she laughed so freely. As the evening grew late and Emma's yawns became more frequent, David carried her to bed. Sarah could hear him reading to her, his voice gentle and steady, and she sat in the living room, looking at the Christmas tree and feeling something she hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging, however brief. When David returned, he poured them each a cup of tea and sat down across from her. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Emma's been worried about Christmas, about it being too sad. She needed this tonight." "We both did." "I should be thanking you," Sarah replied. "I'd convinced myself I was fine being alone, but I'd forgotten what this feels like, being part of something." They talked for another hour, sharing stories of loss and survival, of the small ways they'd learned to keep going. David spoke of his sister, of the promise he'd made to raise Emma with love and laughter. Sarah spoke of her accident, of the long rehabilitation, of building a new life from the pieces of the old one. "The hardest part," Sarah admitted, "isn't the physical challenges, it's the isolation. People see the wheelchair before they see me. They either pity me or ignore me." Tonight, Emma just saw another person, someone who might be lonely on Christmas. "Children have that gift," David said. "They see clearly, before the world teaches them to look away." When it was time to leave, David insisted on driving Sarah home. Emma had woken up just enough to give Sarah a sleepy hug and make her promise to come back. "Will you?" Emma asked. "Come back?" Sarah looked at David, who nodded encouragingly. "I'd like that very much," she said. In the car, driving through the quiet streets with their Christmas lights and peaceful snow, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The walls Emma's mother had spoken of, the ones Sarah had built so carefully around her heart, had somehow found their door. "Same time next week," David asked as he pulled up to her building. "Emma wants to show you her book collection, and honestly, I could use someone to talk to who understands." "I'd love that," Sarah said, and meant it. As she rode the elevator up to her apartment, Sarah realized that sometimes grace arrives in the most unexpected packages. A child's courage, a simple invitation, An evening of shared stories and sugar cookies. She'd gone to the park that evening feeling invisible, forgotten. She came home feeling seen. The snow was still falling when she looked out her window before bed, the city transformed into something soft and hopeful. Tomorrow was Christmas, and for the first time in years, Sir found herself looking forward to what might come next. Not just tomorrow, but all the tomorrows after that. Because Emma was right. Sometimes being kind takes courage, and sometimes accepting kindness takes even more.